greatest show in fantasy football history, hosted by the incomparable Scott Connor and the one and only Ray GQ. I present to you Destination Chill, where football and fantasy collide.
GEGP, welcome in everybody for another stream of Destination Chill. I am your host of this bad boy, Ray G. Y'all know who I am and where to find me on X at Ray GQ, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother from another mother, Scott Connor. You can find him at Charles Chill FFB. Appreciate all y'all good people being in the building tonight. Dr. B. Harris, I see you in here. Ricardo, what's going down with you? Fly Meatwall, what's up? Zach, we got Conja in the building. Doxy, Paul, Ball is Life, Cold World TD, Ty DeClaire in the damn building. I'm excited. I am excited, Scott. We have been pumping out content day and night, it feels like. Destination Chill, twice a week. You've got your show that comes out on the podcast feed on Monday. We're doing mock draft reviews. Destination Chill tonight. We talked about a massive trade that we did last week. It's a good time, man. I'm excited. I'm excited to do this show with you because I think we've got to talk about the rookies, man. The wide receivers in this class in 2024. Pumped up, very good class, and I think a lot of good wide receivers. But we got to talk about it from a fantasy perspective. So, Connor, how you doing tonight, baby?
I am good, and I'm looking forward to these next couple streams. Probably, 5 days until everything changes with free agency and everyone's mind starts going away from rookies for a little bit. Talking about running back landing spots, quarterback landing spots. But no, I'm excited. I think we're coming off the high of the combine. We talked about it Sunday. We were just pumped with the value of these late firsts, early seconds, and we had a conversation today in the Discord, patreon.com/allgas, destinationdevi.com. If you want more of this kind of talk, we kind of talked about, have people actually been seeing what we talked about Sunday, Ray? Have people actually seen the value of these late firsts, early to mid seconds? And we had some prominent members that are in there constantly chopping it up and listening to us, basically saying one of the things that they're starting to digest from this class, from our conversation on Sunday, and just seeing what people are saying about these rookies is it feels like there's a little separation now with the picks in certain ranges, but it also feels like instead of drumming up more activity for those picks, which I want to hit on that too, of how you play these picks. But the takeaway was it feels like the people that have the picks now have the expectation that they're worth more. But it also feels like people are just more likely now, if they can't get the trade they want, is just make the picks. And we'll get into that a little bit later as to why. But it doesn't feel like there's more trades going down with these picks. It's almost like I finally have realized I missed out. But hell no, am I paying into the hype of the class right now. I'm not paying to get that 112, especially because I could have had it cheaper last week, but now I know the price to pry it away from you, Ray, at this time, before the draft, before the rookie hype really hits, is way higher. So I don't think it's creating more activity, but there's certainly more excitement for the picks. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Not yet. It is March 6th, so I don't expect the rookie pick hype or the peak or the hysteria. I don't think we're even close to there yet. Just wait. Wait until Pro Day. Wait until we get closer to the draft where you start to hear more rumors and information. Wait till we get a couple of trades. I want to quickly pull up Jordan Reed, somebody that I respect a ton, somebody that I call an industry friend, mentor, whatever you want to call it. Does work at ESPN, worked at the Draft Network. Y'all know I was at the Draft Network at one point in time. But he released a 2-round mock on ESPN earlier this week. And what I want to do, we're not going through the whole mock, but we're just going to scroll through, look at where the receivers land, see how many receivers he had going in 2 rounds. And most of the times you don't get 2-round mocks. You get like 1 round. So we get 2 rounds of picks. And let's just count up the receivers and look at the landing spots. And then we're going to dive into what we should think, feel, process, how valuable would that 111 or 112 be if these landing spots were to come to fruition. So, Scott, right here at the top, we got Marvin Harrison Jr. at Florida, Arizona, pretty standard. We see this all over the place, playing with Kyler Murray. In Reed's mock, the Bears, and let's take the conversation with this exercise in mind. They trade up, all right? They trade up to take Malik Neighbors out of LSU. Then you've got Rome Odunze right after Neighbors coming off of the board to the Giants, and we know they don't have a wide receiver there. scroll down a little bit further because it takes a while before we get the next wide receiver off of the board. A lot of other picks. Check out the link in the description below if you want the full mock. But we get down here to 28. You've got Adonai Mitchell, the fourth receiver off the board, going to the Buffalo Bills. After that, Brian Thomas Jr. going to the Baltimore Ravens with Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers. Keep that in mind. And then you've got Xavier Worthy going to the Kansas City Chiefs. Fastest man ever at the Combine. Let's continue down the board because it happens real early. Top of the second, Keon Coleman off of the board, the Carolina Panthers. Still inside the top 40. Ladd McConkey, 38 overall to the Tennessee Titans. No receiver there either. Keep going down the board, and a little bit later, you see Xavier Legette to Atlanta. Think about the new coach, new quarterback potentially with Kirk Cousins. So now we're at, I believe, 9 wide receivers inside the top 45. Go down a little bit more. There's another one, Roman Wilson to Michigan at 46 to the Indianapolis Colts. And I think we will stop there. Well, let's finish the second. So 50. Are there any more? Oh, look at that. Malachi Corley, 54 to the Cleveland Browns. Another up. Troy Franklin to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, Mike Evans can't play forever, and I think we are done there. So how many receivers did we just get out of that mock right there, Scott? Was that 13?
12.
12
I think
receivers.
we had 6 in the first and 6 in the second. So we're looking at 12 in the first 2 rounds, and not even to mention some of the names, 3 or 4 names that people in the chat would pick out as guys they would put in their top 10 or top 12, but didn't make it. But I think the overall picture of just, would it be shocking if there were 10 to 12 receivers that get drafted in the first 2 rounds, 10 in the top 50, 8 or 9 in the top 40? No, I think, and that's the operation or the assumption that I'm operating under right now. And I think that's reflective in how people are talking about the class. But diving a little bit deeper, that's what I kind of want to get into with this, Ray. You talked about it Sunday. We've talked about it in the Discord, about how these late firsts, early seconds, mid seconds, because we didn't even mention running backs. We didn't mention a tight end. We didn't mention, hell, there was a couple quarterbacks that could go in the first 2 rounds. I mean, Trade 5, we were talking about that tier break, and we said 206 to 208 comfortably in a super flex, to where you're kind of like, all right, if I have no needs and I'm just looking at receivers that get capital, quarterbacks that could play, tight ends that could start, running backs that can fill out in any running back on a 53 with a strong chance of getting opportunity earlier, we're at 24 players right there off the rip. Now, you may not like all of them, but that just speaks to the depth and the power of the class. Now, I kind of want to dive into the receiver portion of that, because I already see some comments in the chat. Ray, there's going to be some busts at this. There's going to be some receivers that bust after the top 3. Do we want to just, I know maybe we disagree on top 3 or top 4, but I'm seeing Rome Odunze has moved up 2 spots on Keep Trade Cut. Malik Neighbors has moved up 3 spots on Keep
I'm pulling up KTC right now. I was literally just doing that as you were talking. So keep going. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say that I think we're going to get to a point very soon, if not probably by the end of the week or sometime middle of next week, where it is a foregone conclusion that Neighbors and Marv and Odunze are top 12 to top 15 receivers in Dynasty, and they're almost seen as they're already there. They've already hit. They're already going to get the capital, and I don't think that's unfounded to say they're going to all go in the top 10. Historic hit rates of receivers that get picked in the top 10 is different than a hit on a receiver that goes at pick 30, pick 27. So I think by time we get closer to the draft, you're going to have 3 locked and loaded people already talking about, man, should I take Chris Olave or Rome Odunze? Is it A.J. Brown or Malik Neighbors? Is it Jamar Chase or Marvin Harrison? Like, it's going to be so much locked in with those 3 that it's almost like they can't bust. Because even if they have a down year, even if one of them has bad circumstance like a Garrett Wilson or a Drake London, they're still going to have the hopium going into year 2. So I almost see them as like extremely insulated prospects that we can exclude for this analysis. Now, you've added Brian Thomas as closer to potentially Rome Odunze. Where's your thoughts on that? If he gets top 20 draft capital, are you putting him up closer into that tier or the everybody else tier? Let's just start with him first.
He is in that tier for me. And I know and by tier, if I really had to tier it out, I'd be like, okay, it's kind of those three, and then it would be Brian Thomas Jr. in his own tier, but he's in a tier of 4 who I believe could be alpha level target earners for whatever respective team they get. Let's take this mock, for example. If Brian Thomas were to be drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, I'm not saying it happens immediately, but I do think that he ends up becoming the dominant primary wide receiver in that offense. I believe there are 4 guys, and Brian Thomas is in that he's in there. If I had to prioritize and pick him, he would be 4th, no doubt. But he's in there as a potential guy that can be a wide receiver 1 for a team, yes.
And is that the analysis that you're using? Is you think they could come in and become the best receiver on the team that they go to? So instead of it having to be tied to a certain quarterback or having to be tied to a certain offense, it's they walk in, like, because you mentioned Baltimore. And I'm curious, like, that's a spot where I don't think the community loves. There's already a good tight end, 2 good tight ends. There's already a good receiver there. Would that be a spot where I'm looking for, regardless of where they land, they get the capital and they're viewed as a prospect where it's like, all right, man, I don't love that Rome Odunze landing spot, but I can just live through a year or two of only 1,000 yards. Because I think there is a difference in how the community is going to view A versus B. And I'm trying to figure out where that line is so we can talk about the line that's below it.
I am looking at where Drake London is currently valued as wide receiver 14. And that was a guy that we've done this for. Landing spot.
2 years in a row. Still waiting.
Landing spot 100% matters. Like, it may not matter from the sense that if Rome, let's just take this example. He goes to the Giants. They're in QB purgatory. Daniel Jones isn't very good. They don't have a replacement. They draft Bo Nix. He stinks. Yes, he may very well be the wide receiver 1 on that team, but if they do not have the competency around him to get him the ball, I don't want to suffer through Drake London again for 2 more years. Because here's the thing, in between that time, you've had multiple opportunities over and over and over again to acquire Drake London in Dynasty at a cost that was far more reasonable than the expectation that the player had coming in. And I just want to answer this question right now. Is this class overrated? I think the answer to that question is absolutely not. I think the wide receiver class from top to bottom, and we didn't even get to cats that are going to be ranked wide receiver 27 in the NFL draft that can come in and be good contributors for their NFL team. I think what we must do, and the thing that we have a very difficult time doing in Dynasty, in fantasy football, is tempering and managing expectations. I think we have a very and from both sides of the fence, we have a very difficult time managing the expectation from a I want them to score more perspective. And then we're also hypercritical when said player doesn't go out there and be Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson year 1. So my big thing this year going into 2024 is making sure that we at least do our job at providing information that helps manage those expectations for what you expect out of your rookie wide receivers. And that's why in my ranks, in my database, I try to do that by the category in the tiers in which I place those players in. That way, if you trust what I think or trust what I believe or trust what I kind of lay down and go through, you'll be able to say, okay, Ray has 8 receivers that he believes will be year 1 starters. He's got 4 that are going to be, or he perceives to be, alpha level target earners. And then he's got some that he's got boom bust starter potential, backup wide receivers who can, trying to help people manage those expectations. I think that is something that we have to do this year because, Scott, I'm pulling it up right again, just so people can see. All right. I'm pulling this up so people can see. Look at the names that we have inside of the top 20. This is Dynasty, but can carry right over to seasonal leagues. I don't anticipate 5 other receivers knocking Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka, Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown, Chris Olave, Tyreek, a 1,300-yard Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, Nico Collins. They're not going to outproduce those guys. A few of them will, but not at the level in which we are holding these receivers in regard to. It's just, we do this stuff every year, and we got to start to reel it back in, man. To go out there and drop 1,300, 1,400 yards, you've got to be a very special talent, and you got to be in a pretty damn good situation. What do all these receivers have in common right here, right? Outside of London, Waddle, good quarterback. Ayuk, good quarterback. Hill, quarterback. Olave, number one target earner, so it really doesn't matter, but Derek Carr is at least an average quarterback. A.J. Brown, good quarterback. Garrett Wilson, he's there off of value, but alpha, he's getting 150 targets. It just kind of doesn't matter, right? Just doesn't matter. If he's going to get 150, and if you tell me Odunze is going to get 150, then it doesn't matter. But the thing that all of these receivers have in common is they had above average to elite quarterback play, and that is what's helped sustain them. So, hell yeah, if you go to New England or the Giants, I am a little concerned.
I think the thing to establish, though, and it's been said in the chat a couple times, is if you get elite capital, so we're not talking about I go pick 21. We're talking about I'm a top 10 pick. That is where there are positions, quarterbacks, edge rushers, offensive tackles, that a team is basically saying, I'm taking Rome Odunze over a starting left tackle, right? Over a starting quarterback. Now, that's obviously there's team needs and whatnot, but I think draft capital that is that high hits different. I think the next thing is, how much do people like these players before we see any of that? Before their landing spot, before their draft capital. That keep trade cut data tells me they think Malik Nabers is awesome. He's Garrett Wilson plus already. He's already there. Whether he ends up staying there or not, he's already there. Marvin Harrison has been there for the last year. Yeah. And Rome is climbing into that range to where, and I said this last night, we have 3 receivers that are potentially going to start in dynasty rankings higher than any rookies ever started before. The highest receiver to enter the league in ADP is JSN last year. Wide receiver 9. Think about that. We may have 3 that are close to that before we even get to the draft. And you're telling me, well, these receivers, these top 3 are likable. Plus, we think they're going to get the capital. I agree that I don't want to wait 2 years. I don't want to be on Rome Odunze and he's had 2 Drake London or Garrett Wilson years, and you're like, damn, man, it's really hard to keep clicking wide receiver 9 when I rank them, but is there really 9 guys you would take over Garrett Wilson if you had to start from scratch in February where a lot of stuff is unknown? I don't know. But I will say, if there's other things that these guys do, I mean, why did Drake London maintain? Well, man, he had a 32% target share as a rookie, right? So we're able to kind of look aside from some of the negatives and go, the dude's good. He was a top 10 pick, and we liked him before the draft. So, therefore, he's going to stay in this range. So, I think the conversation for me is I'm leaning towards these 3. Stay in that range, even if they land in an average spot, as long as they're not just clearly bad. Okay, they put up 500 yards. Someone else on their team that we consider to be, I don't know about that guy, is out-targeting them. That's a different story. But let's just assume they come in and they do what's expected. I think these 3 are about as bulletproof as they can get, starting and maintaining. There's going to be a couple years grace with them. After that, though, that's where I really want to talk about.
Yes.
Are the picks overrated? Brian Thomas, will keep him on the fence. I think Brian Thomas, we could see get drafted in the top 15, right? Odunze, Nabers, Marv go in the top 7, top 8, top 9. A team may go, you know what? The next guy we have is Brian Thomas, and that team might be at pick 13, pick 14. It's possible. So I don't know. I don't want to count his draft capital in or out yet, but I think everybody else you mentioned from pick 20 and beyond all the way to the end of the second, those are the ones that are a little volatile, landing spot dependent, but I think people are excited in different ways for all of them. So that's why I want to talk through that 8 to, I don't know, we could probably name 4, 5, 6 that weren't even in the top 2 rounds. That's what I want to decipher.
Who do you want to start with? Since we've already kind of determined that we don't even need to talk about Marv, Malik, and Rome, we'll leave Brian Thomas alone. You want to just go likability, X-worthy next up, like this cluster of Worthy, Franklin, Mitchell?
Yeah, let's do an interesting analysis. Let's just go down the keep trade cut ranks right now and just stop at each rookie and kind of talk through. What I want to talk through is a little bit of their profile the
Mhm.
capital that we're looking at in the mock. But I
Mhm.
also want to kind of hit on the likability / let's
Oh
envision some
yeah.
realistic range of outcomes for these guys. And I'm going to find I have a list of all the historic rookie production receivers over the last 6 years. And I just want to find a couple names. And I did this exercise in voice chat earlier. You weren't there, but I want to kind of throw some out to you and just give you realistic outcomes. And then I want you to tell me based on how you feel if you have this player on a dynasty roster right now.
All right,
So
this
we'll
is
go
fun.
through
Let's
and we'll
do it.
start after Brian Thomas. Xworthy. Okay. Where's Xworthy going in the mock? I think he was at the end of the first, right?
32 to
In
Kansas
Jordan
City.
Reed's mock.
He skyrockets. That happens.
32
He
for
goes
Kansas.
absolutely nuclear.
Yes, he is probably, what would you say, right there with Brian Thomas. There might even be people taking him higher just based on that. Like, we're taking another shot on wide receiver 4.
Let's use this mock as it happened because at least we've got a foundation, right? He goes to Kansas City. Brian Thomas goes to Baltimore. Yep. There's not a question in my mind. People draft Xworthy over Brian Thomas.
Okay. So he's got the analytical profile, right? He's been a Devy name that's been on the radar for years. He's young. He's one of these guys that's 20 years old, that's produced in college, is going to a good landing spot. And he's got it's going to be natural to be thinking about, all right, could he be? I was listening to a pod today and they were talking about, man, I'd really like, this was not even talking about the Chiefs, but they just kept saying, man, it's hard to not like Xworthy because the production, the age, the speed, and they just keep mentioning the Tyreek Hill outcome, right? Like, what is the best case outcome for some of these other names? And they're throwing out some wild comps on Brian Thomas and Keon Coleman and Troy Franklin, and it just keeps coming back to Tyreek Hill, Xavier Worthy. Like, I'm going to shoot for that in a lineup league, and if he goes to the Chiefs, people are going to be doing that. But then let's put the brakes on, okay? What is a realistic outcome for Xavier Worthy as a rookie, Ray? Because you know you're going to have the ADV. So the first question is going to be, how much Xavier Worthy would you have if it's costing you that price off the rip? Or is that going to be one where you're like, I'm going to kind of buy in later on? Because I think the ADV is going to be there, but the person that takes him is going to take him at 108, 109, meaning they're already getting drafted at the high end of the price tag, right? The ADV's already factored in the price to get him. But what do you think a realistic, don't even give me points or catches or
I'm not going to do that. I'm just
realistic role for him.
He finishes the season behind Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice in both receptions and yards, but I can see him somehow scoring more touchdowns than one of the two. Somehow, that speed, he popped some big plays, but he was clearly the wide receiver 3 on that team behind Rashee Rice, who had a good year too, but it wasn't like he went 1,500 yards either.
Okay, so he's a number 3 target, and is he seen as a guy that's role is going to continue to grow into year 2, or do you think it's going to be one where, all right, we've already pigeonholed him into he's a 100 target a year guy, but he's going to be boom or bust? Like, do you think the narrative on that will continue, or do you think it's as Kelce moves on, the ADV will continue to rise? Like, people will kind of think he grows into his role. How do you think people will perceive him?
Under this sort of exercise, Rashee Rice had another productive year too, which was better than year 1. So I think at that point, he's pretty much cemented himself as the one there. There might be some hopium that he can overtake Rice, but I think the reality of people will be like, that's the one. He's a really good 2, kind of like a poor man's A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I think he'll be viewed in that similar role, just like how Waddle is viewed to Tyreek, but not to that degree.
Do you think a fair comp for him, maybe a poor man's version of him, would be how we viewed Tank Dell this year, but not with Tank Dell did not have the ADV built in. But do you think people will kind of view him as he's the second receiver, but dude, he's with Patrick Mahomes. He's got massive ceiling week to week.
And the perception that people will have is he's better than the other guy. They just need to throw it to him more. Stop throwing to Rice so much. Just like they do with Houston. They don't need to throw to Nico Collins. Just throw it all to Tank Dell, right? I think that's how people would view it. But the outcome, I think Rice is still the one on that team.
And especially if he's the wide receiver 5 or 6 off the board, you're going to also hear that's the dude Mahomes wanted. He's looking for his next Tyreek. You know, he's looking for that guy. So I think this landing spot specifically for Xavier Worthy's profile almost makes him, I don't want to say bulletproof, but it makes me go, you know what? Even if he only gets 50 catches as a rookie, and he's clearly the third option, 50 catches, 800 yards, let's say he scores 9 touchdowns. That'd be a successful year, I think. It's not going to matter, though, because people are going to go, you know what? He's just going to get better. That he's going to be somebody you have years.
This is important. This is important. Dynasty Sykes said this in the chat. Part of the allure of rookie wide receivers is they don't have to be complete monsters year one to hold their weight, a la one. This is incorrect. It's not correct. It's not correct. Some of them do. Because Rashee Rice just did this. But because he was a second round pick,
we have more that you're gonna see that just did stuff, and you're gonna go, I don't know. But continue.
Exactly. But like what he's saying is right. But the reason why it worked for Garrett Wilson, why? Because people liked Garrett Wilson before. Because people already like Garrett Wilson coming into the season. Rashee Rice just put up 1,000 yards with Patrick Mahomes, and people are, I don't know. I don't know if I can buy into that Rice year too. So if the perception of the player is good coming in, then, oh, yeah, they don't need the smash. They can maintain and hold value, just like Drake London has been awful for your fans. He has been damn near unstartable for 2 years, and you keep jamming him in your lineup, and you make excuses, and it has nothing to do with that's my dude. I love me some Drake London, but he ain't had no business being in a damn lineup. He's been awful for 2 years. But because people like him, they give him if Keon Coleman goes out there and does what Drake London does, people will be like, oh, man, that's it. 600, 700 yards, that's it. So let's speed this up. We're halfway through, and we only gone through damn Xavier Worthy. Or
no,
you know
but
what?
I think
we're not going to speed. Stay here. Just stay here, man.
No, once we get the flow down, we'll be able to go through them a little quicker. But I think it's important to go, what is Xavier Worthy's profile? What is his likability? And then what is the narrative around the landing spot that we're talking about? I view him here as all of those things are positives. So if there's a guy that can go out and survive a 50-catch, 750-yard season with 6 touchdowns, but the storyline from the community is going to be just wait till year 2, it's Xavier Worthy in that situation. So let's continue down. Troy Franklin, I think he went late 2 to Green Bay in that mock.
57 to the Bucks.
To the Bucks. Okay.
57 to the Bucks.
With Evans coming back, how do you view that landing spot? The community is already down on Troy Franklin after the combine, right? There was people that liked him before, but they're down on him after the combine. His draft capital here is what, wide receiver 12 in this class, which, listen, wide receiver 12 in this class is no shade. You can't say, oh, man, he was the 12th receiver off the board. That's probably wide receiver 8, 9, 10 in another class. So, I mean, I'm not going to shit on him for being wide receiver 12. But this is late second round capital. This is not a spot where I would expect year 1 production.
Absolutely not.
So lower capital, kind of an iffy prospect in terms of people liking him or not liking him. I mean, if you look at his actual profile, like, it's not great, but it's also not like terrible. You know, he's a young guy. He's an early declare. He's a 20-year-old, will be 21. So people will like him for that. But lower capital, bad landing spot. Let me give you a comp for Troy Franklin and just tell me if you're excited to have this guy on your team. Now, this guy got a little bit lower draft capital, Ray, but how are you feeling right now if you drafted Josh Downs? You see him in a start 10 lineup league and you scroll past his name. Does it get you the butterflies where you're like, damn, no. I'm so glad I made that pick?
Absolutely.
Or is it, I would love to re-roll for damn near anybody we're talking about in this draft. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. And I think that this is one of the sobering realities of, like, we could go through some names and I can read you their stat lines and go, dude, Josh Downs had almost 70 catches. But you see his name and you're just like, I mean, and Josh Downs was a similar, I think, prospect pedigree coming in than Troy Franklin, right? He was not a bum. He was not a fourth year, came out of nowhere. He's been around. He slipped in the draft, and I think that's kind of Troy Franklin. So this is one of those that would be in danger.
Right there. Yeah, you caught me slipping right there because I mean, even Matt West said it. Downs had a nice year too, and you're that likability. Like I don't know, I don't know.
Well, and I think part of it is why did Downs slip? Because if I told you without telling you the stat line, I go, is this a good number for a rookie that is poised to be the number 2 target on his offense going into this year? You'd be going, yeah. Great Devy profile. Was 20 years old coming in, productive his whole college career. You'd be going, hell yeah, give me that guy. And then I say, Ray, it's Josh Downs. You're just like
injury. And
yeah.
It's not even that. Golly, man. He says, is the fantasy community down on Josh Downs? I don't know if it's so much as being down on him, but it's just he's a good player, but he doesn't get you excited to press draft. He just doesn't.
I think most people, if they were telling the truth, if they could get back into this class right now to the 208 for Josh Downs, they would happily give up their Josh Downs.
Probably
and that's
not.
all that needs to be said. But what happened to Josh Downs after year 1? He's immediately in a bucket now. You're glad you have him, but the only out is he just needs to keep producing. If he doesn't do minimum what he did last year, he doesn't stay in, he's a solid second round level receiver. He's down another tier after this year.
Correct.
If he just does what he did last year. So he has no ADV. There is no likability or demand with a guy like Downs. So I think that's where Mitchell in this case, or Franklin in this case, would fall. So let's go to AD Mitchell.
Yeah.
Where did he go in this mock?
With the Buffalo. 28. I mean, he's, again, if he went there, Brian Thomas went to the Ravens, and X-Worthy went to the Chiefs, all within a 5-6 pick range, he's coming off the board right around Worthy. Some leagues, he's before Worthy. He's the 4 off the board. He's the 5 off the board. I think both would go ahead of Brian. I think both would go ahead of Brian Thomas.
Yes. Mitchell did not have as good of a profile as Xavier Worthy, but his testing was great. His capital would be great here. And I think a lot of what we said about Xavier Worthy would exist with AD Mitchell. As long as he goes to Buffalo and he holds his own, I mean, people were still in on Gabe Davis for 3 years. So, I mean, I think Mitchell here, and this is, I think, the importance of he did not have the ADB coming in, but he had a good combine. He's now on people's radar. And in this case, he gets first-round capital to a landing spot where you know he's tied to an elite quarterback. So I think everything we said about X-Worthy, as long as he goes out and doesn't just Quentin Johnston it, where he's like, man, this guy really shouldn't be playing over Khalil Shakir.
Right,
you know what I mean? And
right.
it's obvious. He's locked. He can have a solid rookie year, and in year 2, it's like wheels up. So I think a lot of what we said about Worthy applies in this case to AD Mitchell. So let's move on, because I don't think we need to repeat a lot of those points. I think a lot of them are the same.
All right, where are we at after AD Mitchell? Here we go.
Yep.
Here we
Where
go.
did he go?
He went the first pick in the second round to the Carolina Panthers.
Okay. Thoughts on that one? Because I think that one is – most people would not peg him getting drafted that high, but I don't think it's crazy.
He would be, and let me be very clear when I say this. Let's get this off the screen. This is not a comparison. I do not believe they're the same player. I actually like Keon Coleman quite a bit. I think he is a high boom bust type starter in this class, but he would be the Quentin Johnston of this class, to where if you draft him and he starts off a little, hell, it ain't got nothing to do with Keon. The Panthers start off slow. Bryce Young looks like booty again. Can't get him the ball. He's out there, can't pull targets away from Adam Thielen or Jonathan Mingo or whoever else they bring in. Nobody will want him. Nobody will want him. If you draft Keon and things don't go well early, that's the guy that I promise you will either sit on or you will trade 50 cents on the dollar. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think this landing spot is a great landing spot, but it's also, like you said, a landing spot where people are going to be expecting off the rip he's the best receiver in the team. And then 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, you're going, man, why is Mingo getting all the targets? Why is Thielen still getting targets? You know, where is this Keon Coleman? I think, you know who's a good comparison to him? Not same profile-wise, but I think he has the if I had to look, I think he looks very similar to like a Christian Watson type from just where he landed, because Christian Watson landed in a spot where, he was probably the most talented receiver when he landed there. But then Christian Watson lands in a spot where it's like people didn't love him, but they didn't hate him, and they told themselves the story on how, this guy could be the next A or B. I mean, I know he had the injuries, but I think the expectation.
People liked Watson. He
a
was
little
big. He
bit.
ran 4.3. They do not like this. I've been watching. The sentiment around Keon Coleman is slow bust. The only people defending him literally are people who kind of watch the tape that are like, dude, he plays faster than this. I don't care about the 4.6. I feel like the sentiment towards Keon is, even if they didn't love Watson, I think they dislike Keon more than they didn't love Christian Watson. I think if he went to Carolina and things didn't click early, people would just auto bury him immediately.
Okay. Let me throw out this comp to you, because I think it's it's perfect. Would you be happy with a 67 catch, 908 yard, 6 touchdown rookie year from Keon Coleman?
Absolutely.
Okay. Would the community, if that happened in Carolina with Bryce Young, would the community steam him up into the top 15 receivers in Dynasty? Okay.
Absolutely not.
Not a fair comparison, but somebody that had that happen to him, who am I talking about?
DJ Moore.
Any clue which? Nope. Got drafted in the exact same spot with the quarterback that went 101 the year before. Any idea who I'm thinking about?
With the quarterback that went 101 the year before, T
Higgins. Exact same landing spot. T landed in a spot with AJ Green, Tyler Boyd, right? Like guys that you expect, if he's good, he's probably outproducing by the midpoint or later in the season. And T did that. But look what happened to T when that happened after his year one.
I know.
Why did he get steamed up? I mean, they liked his quarterback. There's no doubt about that. But I think if someone did that with Bryce Young, people would like Bryce Young a little bit more.
Yes.
It means probably Bryce Young.
Yes.
If Bryce Young feeds a 1,000-yard rookie receiver or something close,
He's
I think
probably
people
pretty
are
good.
Okay, maybe I don't love Bryce for fantasy, but Bryce can feed some receivers for fantasy, right? But did people like T. Higgins? Loved T. Higgins, right?
Loved him, dude. Loved him. What do you
People
mean?
don't like Keon Coleman. So we could have the exact same numbers, and we could be going, the difference is literally just the likability, not the capital, not the profile, the age, the situation. It's just, we didn't really like this guy, so that 900-yard season that's the best he's ever going to do.
Look at the comment. Look at Fly Me One. QJ's season has made Keon near untouched, and this is somebody who's in the trenches, right? Fly Me Wad's in the trenches. I'm not in the I'm in the suburbs, man. They're in the trenches. Too many people already putting the comparison out there, and that is, Scott, we've been kind of talking about this for the better part of over a year now, but you really talk about like, we need a likability score. Whatever that is, because this isn't reflective of likability, because Keep Trade Cut has him coming off the board as the wide receiver 6, 7?
But I think that will move down after the combine. I bet you if we look at this in 2 weeks, that'll be wide receiver 56.
All right, let's go to the next one.
Just because he's falling.
Well, let's go to the next one. Here we go.
Keep going.
All right.
There we go.
Let's get the next cluster on board. We got a nice cluster right here. Ladd McConkey, he went 38th overall to the Tennessee Titans. I don't know.
What would you think about that landing spot?
I
don't think people would generally like it. I do think there'd be some expectations there, but realistically, what would you think his rookie season production would be? Would you think I'll give you one that I think is comparable to Ladd McConkey. 60 catches for 700 yards, 5 touchdowns. How's that sound?
That sounds like best case scenario. That sounds like high end outcome.
Okay. That was a rookie that was a early 3rd round pick, was not a productive college player, came into the draft at 23. And I'm not saying Ladd is comparable, but I don't think it's a crazy comparison. That is Deontay Johnson's rookie year. And I think Deontay had a point where people liked him because his year 2, he went out and commanded a ton of volume. But then look at where Deontay Johnson went to, even after he went out and commanded a 25+% market share, Ray. He's never been in a great situation, and Ladd would not have this situation in his favor, most likely at Tennessee, right? He wouldn't have one that the community goes, man, I love that Tennessee Titans offense. So right there, even after year 2, year 3, didn't Deontay Johnson, wouldn't he have always been the guy where you're like, I'd re-roll that guy for a late first. I'd re-roll that guy for an early second. Early to mid-second. Didn't he almost always feel like a guy was more productive on your roster than ever somebody was like, I need to have him on my team? That feels like Ladd McConkey's realistic outcome. And it feels like you and I are super excited about Ladd. I think you have him at wide receiver 5, right?
He's in year 1 starter for me. Year 1 starter tier.
I think it's fair for you to go, in a year from now, I could see people going like, Ladd McConkey. I'm glad I drafted him at the 201, but now I would love to get this year's 201 for him because no one cares about him. So how do you play it when you know you're probably already stepping into a guy like that? Do you just not draft him? Or do you wait for the window? And is he the kind of guy you try to sell? Like, how do you play that? Because that's what we're starting to get into that is going to happen with 3 or 4 or 5 guys in this class.
Well, that's why I said the expectation has to be tempered going in. My expectation for Ladd McConkey, regardless of situation, but especially if he hit a spot where you've got a new offensive coordinator, a young quarterback who's a little volatile up and down, a rookie receiver. Like, here's the thing. Regardless of how, like, the veterans are going to be on, I know rookie euphoria is a worldwide epidemic, and I know you just can't avoid it. But I promise you, as bad as you think Treylon Burks may be, I'll bet anybody right now, opening day, he's on the field and starting wide receiver sets. Bet you that. And they'll have some other random-ass veteran that's on the field and starting wide receiver sets, and Ladd will play and get his opportunity. But I'm not expecting him to come in and go command 125 out the gate. That's not my expectation.
They still have Nuke Hopkins.
They
got sound like it's going anywhere.
And Tajay Spears. Dude,
Ladd is not taking volume from Nuke Hopkins.
Come on, man. Come on, dude. And you think Will Levis is going to throw the ball 600 times this year? My expectation for Ladd McConkey is about what you just said. And if he were to do that, and he on my roster, I'd be fine with that. But I do know that the market for him, I really don't. Yeah, I'll take Ladd, but I'm not paying you the 2025 110 for him. You know, I'll give you a second and a third for him, or I'm not giving you a first round pick in 25 for Ladd. But that's not an indictment on Ladd. It is difficult to come in the NFL and produce, even if you're good. To do what Jefferson, go look at CD early. Like, he didn't just walk out of Oklahoma and drop 1,500 on people's heads. Like, that we have been spoiled, and the expectation is way too high. It's way too damn high. So I'd be fine with that for McConkey.
I will just say this. You mentioned CeeDee Lamb, and I agree with you. He didn't take that elite step until his 3rd year, right? He still posted the 8th best rookie season in the last 7 years. So hey, you look at him, and then you look at some of these other names that still, and I could go through the laundry list. We could go down right now the names from last year. We don't have time to do it on this show. I want to hit the rest of the rookies. There's still 4 or 5 more we need to hit.
Yes.
But you even compare CeeDee Lamb to guys like Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Rashee Rice. He was better than all those guys. You know what I mean? But it feels like, CeeDee Lamb didn't take that next step till year 3. And it's like, nah, his rookie year was pretty historic relative to – it was better than we give it credit for because he wasn't CeeDee Lamb off the rip. But saying like, he's the reason why Ladd McConkey in year 2 or year 3 or year 4 is going to be better is a different story. So let's continue. I think that would be another one where I like Ladd, you like Ladd, but you're drafting yourself. He's probably going to go with the 201, 202, 203. You're drafting yourself, you hope, is a semi-productive player that you hope in a year you can get the 102 or the 112 or the 201 back for.
Yes.
Like, So think about that before you click draft on 20% Lad McConkey in your rookie drafts, what it actually means to draft him, what the production expectation is, and then what you do with him when he is the next Deontay Johnson or Josh Downs, and you're like, I don't know about him. So let's continue. Roman Wilson looks like he's next. I think he's very similar to Lad McConkey. Where did he go in the mock? I can't remember.
47, top 50, went 47 to the Colts.
I mean, if he goes there, are you naturally kind of sitting there thinking like he's not better than Pittman, and you wouldn't expect he's going to be?
No.
Is he better than Josh Downs off the rip, Ray?
No.
Is Roman Wilson putting up 70 receptions?
He is the fourth, fifth option on that team. I'm not even joking. It's Pittman, JT, A-Rich, then it's Josh Downs, and then he's the fifth option. He's the fifth option. And I love me some A-Rich. Y'all know where I'm at. But A-Rich ain't standing back there going 1, 2, 3 Roman Wilson. He ain't doing that. He might go 1, 2 and then run, but he ain't going 1, 2, 3 Roman Wilson. It's not happening. This would be, but here's the thing. He would already be priced at a point where you draft him is, like, I don't think it would push him down anymore, but it definitely wouldn't raise him up. This would be, you like the player and you're hoping that something good happens and you can either sell him, but I would not like this landing spot for Roman Wilson. If they did it in the first round, sure, I feel a lot better about it. But here at 47, this would hurt. This would hurt. And between him and Lad McConkey, I think that's 14 pick difference, 14 wide receiver difference between he and A.D. Mitchell. I believe it's 22 wide receivers off of the board between he and A.D. Mitchell. So I think this would be a disgusting landing spot, despite how good and talented I think Roman Wilson is. It just doesn't seem like he would be, at least immediately. This is a guy that I can get later. I wouldn't even bother. I can buy Roman Wilson later because he ain't better than Pittman, and he's not like I can get him later.
Yeah, I think he would feel very much like another Josh Downs, right? You'd look at him like they're the same thing. I'll take a shot on either one, but they immediately go to a range of like, it doesn't excite me if I see him on your roster. Nope. And we're pointing these out because there's going to be, I don't know who, I don't know where. There's going to be 3 or 4 of these receivers that go in the top 50, top 60 picks that go to spots like this. Where that excitement of that, man, this class is 24 deep. It's 23 deep now after that landing spot.
Let me do this. We just talked about Roman Wilson in Indianapolis. Let's just say, just humor me here. Cowboys are picking 24. They trade back to the top of the second round. They trade back with Carolina. They trade back with the Giants. They trade back with one of those teams at the top of the second. And then Wilson or McConkey go to Dallas. Keon Coleman goes to Dallas after they trade back. The whole way that you thought about it, I guarantee the perception of those players changes. Guarantee.
Sure. 100%. 100%. If they go to one of those spots, which we're lucky in this mock, we got landing spots in Buffalo and Kansas City. We talked about this on Sunday. There's a lot of landing spots in the first round where you're going to go,
Philly.
I don't know.
Philly. Ugh. You know? All right, Xavier Legette. He went higher than Wilson. He went 43rd to the Atlanta Falcons. And let's just assume for this exercise, they've got Kirk Cousins. I don't know who else the hell they have at the other wide receiver spot.
I know, man. I think this is a spot that right now, the thought for fantasy of another player going to the Falcons scares people. But if it's Kirk Cousins, you're sitting there going like, all right, I actually think he might be able to support 3 or 4 weapons, and I could live with it. Legette doesn't have a good profile. He's 23, no college production. I know there's been some pieces written and talked about why that was. But again, I don't think he comes into this with the ADV of like, oh my gosh, I got to have him. So I do think he's a little volatile. Despite that would be a good landing spot if he went there. They've already got Kirk Cousins in the fold. They're basically marketing themselves as this is the new Vikings, right? We're going to be able to field Drake and feed a tight end, and we have our Dalvin Cook, and we can support another receiver. This is a 600-plus pass attempt team that's going to be efficient. Like, people are excited for this, but would people be excited for this player there, right? Or is it a little bit tempered? If it was a different guy here, would there be more excitement?
Who's got more stink on him, Keon or Leggett? I need to know. Chat, talk to me. Who's got more stink on him? You think Keon's got more stink than Leggett?
Yes,
really?
Because I think Leggett did very well at the combine, and people are talking themselves. Hey, we're not going to get into this tonight, but I think one of the themes is people are not necessarily chasing the next Puka Nacua or Tank Dell. What they're doing is they're talking themselves in some of the other factors that we haven't looked at as hard in the past and excusing them away. College production, okay, I can excuse that away. But it's landing spot and opportunity, and I think he would present that here, and we're ignoring some of the other stuff. And I agree with the chat.
The chat agree. I disagree with y'all. I disagree with
I think Legett's stock is way up. I think it was down in Mobile.
Man.
Because he wasn't great. He was banged up, but I think it has risen. I think people are now including him in that top 9 to 12 receivers where he was outside of that range before. Yes. Yes.
Because he ran a 4.39 in jump tie? I'm asking, is that why?
He's big. He's big and fast, and we don't care.
4 weeks ago, they hated him. Hated him at the Senior Bowl. Terrible.
I'm just saying he's big and fast, and people don't care as much about college production or age anymore. And they should. And you don't just throw it away. We've been spending a decade in Dynasty analyzing some of those data numbers and saying they matter, but it's completely excused for him. But I do think this landing spot would present some appeal. But I think I'd rather have a different receiver here. But he's the one that went here in this mock. So I'm neutral on this. What would happen if inevitably the Falcons are not the Vikings from 2023 and they're a little worse and Xavier Leggett is not Jordan Addison or even KJ Osborne from 2 years ago.
I don't think he's got I don't think he would I think he would fall like a rock. He'd fall like a rock. All right.
You know who he kind of remind me of? He's kind of the Jahan Dotson. I got to draft him in this range, but man, I'm not a big fan of him, and I'm looking for a reason to say he's not that good. That's the comp that came to mind. Not stylistically, but Dotson was like was drafted in the first round, and people weren't in on it from the get-go.
Let's do something a little different here because I don't think we need to go through, at least for now, Polk and Corley. But which one of these receivers as we go down? You got Corley, Devontae Walker, Brendan Rice, Pearsall. Which one of these guys has the ADV, the name cachet that you can see, and these will change because post-combine, but for me, it's Ricky Pearsall. Looking at where he's at, that's the guy that I feel like is going to end up rising up the boards over the next couple of weeks. Ricky Pearsall, and I think the enthusiasm for Brendan Rice is starting to move up a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at that Atlanta landing spot and just picking names where if you substituted Leggett for probably 4 or 5 other names, I think they might have just as much or more clout. I think Pearsall's one. Another one we didn't talk about was Tez Walker.
Tez Walker.
People were down on him after the Senior Bowl, right? But they're right back in. Why, Ray? Because he ran fast. You thought he'd run fast, right?
I mean, you would hope so.
Him and Legett's perception of how we felt in Mobile and how we felt kind of – because when we got to Mobile, at least this is for me, those were supposed to be the two dudes, right? Leggett and Tez Walker were like the guys that people were kind of talking about late first round. Like they're the dudes here. And then we leave and it's like Brendan Rice, Roman Wilson, Ladd McConkey. Not who I would have picked
right
coming in as the guys to wow.
But
it feels like Leggett and Walker have recovered because they tested well. So if they land in a spot like Atlanta where there's immediate opportunity, I think people are going to be in, but they'll quickly be out if they're probably not better than what the overhead expectation should have been to begin with. Like Tez Walker goes to Atlanta. I think he could complement a guy like Drake
London. I think that'd be a great fit.
But what's the expectations? Probably not great for fantasy year one.
No.
You know? Just probably not.
Better for best ball. What if Brendan Rice goes to the 49ers?
Is there any... I mean...
I'm just... What if he goes to the 49ers?
You're just talking narrative. How about Ricky Pearsall goes to the... Ricky Pearsall to the Rams, Ray.
That's what I'm saying. Dude, for real. You can't...
We're laughing, okay. But if these happen, there's ADV built into these picks where you go, Ricky Pearsall goes to the Rams, dude, he's the next Cooper Kupp.
I guarantee you he
You know
goes
what I
ahead
mean?
of
Like-
Keon Coleman. Guarantee you that, who came off as wide receiver. He's going ahead of Troy Frank. I guarantee you, if the Rams take Ricky Pearsall in the second, he will be like wide receiver 6 for a lot of people. Right, wrong, or indifferent, he'll be a top 8 receiver. And this is no Ricky. I think Ricky Pearsall is a good receiver. I mean, I think he is a very good receiver, and he's going to be a very good player in the NFL. But that ADV, my God, people won't even care that he's white. Yep, he's white. He's going to be in the slot. He's Cooper Kupp. That will be the consensus narrative from most, 100%. Hell, the Rams were in on.
Yeah, just to tease to everybody.
Go ahead.
No, Rams were in on who? I want to hear it.
I don't know. I was about to perpetuate fake news. Just disregard. It was about to be fake news. I don't need to be questioned after the show. It was fake news. Continue to go.
Well, no, one more that I wanted to point out that I've heard. He's just existed for me, but I've been trying to consume like some other Dynasty content and their reactions to the combine, right? Because that's where a lot of people that we're going to be playing against are getting their information. You know, what are some bigger name voices saying about these players? And you've already seen it, right? The comps of, man, that Luke McCaffrey, comparing him to his brother. Look how they tested, you know? If Luke finds a good spot, man, he can be the Christian of receivers. I mean, I'm seeing it, but I want to give a teaser to this because JB and I are working on something. We just started going back and forth on something today, but rookie pick war. We want to bring that to the people. We want to incorporate that into the War Tool. We want to talk about that on War Games. But the data that we've been looking at, he sent me some stuff today. I'm clueless at how to get this data, but I just send him a message like, hey, can you pull like this for me and just send me a spreadsheet so I can look at it? But the first takeaway, and this was true last year when I was looking at it, and then what he sent me, the way he's calculated is a little bit differently than how I was doing it. But the major takeaway is, holy shit, we overvalue just getting to make those fun rookie picks after the top 15 or so rookie picks. Meaning we are vastly overvaluing our ability to spot the next Puka at the 301 or that excitement to draft that player at 212 or 306. Like, Ray, all of those picks just historically are all negative war. Every damn one of them. Yet we're sitting here talking about a rookie class that we're thinking is 24 players deep. And we tried to go through realistic outcomes of like, what happens if Ladd McConkey goes to the Titans or Brendan Rice goes to San Francisco? The major theme for me is once you get to a certain point, almost the sole focus of why you pick a player or pass on a player is this analysis we talked about tonight.
Absolutely.
I don't like Brendan Rice, but if he's on San Francisco and his name is Rice, and here's the kicker, Ray. His dad lets him wear his number.
Oh, man.
That's, and I hate to say it, but that is the analysis of why to draft a guy. Period. There isn't anything else you need to look at. Forget about his dominator rating at 19. Forget about his combine testing. It is truly like, what narrative can I paint to where I make a pick today at whatever pick it is, and even if I can't sell for a profit, I have a fluid asset for the next year that next year come draft time, people aren't going, I'm not even giving you a third for Brendan Rice.
Yes.
Good luck with it. Because if that's the case and Josh Downs is stuck on your roster for the next 5 years, you may go, man, that was a good pick for me at the 209. But what did you get out of it? Nothing. Yeah. Nothing at all. So that's the final point. This exercise. I think we need to do more of this. This is how we're going to be rookie drafting. Is perception.
Let's tie a bow in this and clear that up. And what Scott said, my wife is in the chat. What's up, baby? She put a chicken and a star and a rocket in there. So I guess we're chickens and we're stars and a rocket. I don't know. Appreciate you, baby. But the takeaway is this. Scott and I are not telling you today in March to fade Xavier Legette, to fade Tez Walker, to fade Brendan Rice, Ladd McConkey, Malachi Corley, whomever it is. But much like the show that we just put out when we talked about our trades that we made and the league economy within that league, be paying attention to who your league mates like now. Who are the people in your league hyping up, excited for, talking about they can't wait to draft? And who are the people that they are anti, that they don't like, that they negative sentiment? Oh man, that guy's a bust bum, whatever. You know, if I'm in a league with some of y'all, I automatically know y'all don't like Keon Coleman, right? Be paying attention to those things as we progress to the draft, because if these landing spots or some of them were to come to fruition and those players that are either likable or dislikable land in those spots, those might be assets you may want to, I don't want to say steer clear of, but make sure that you're not aggressive in acquiring that player. You know, try to do something. Just understand that this likability, how people perceive the player, like this is a big component of how you are able to get deals done or not. If you've got Jonathan Mingo right now or Quentin Johnston, you can't trade him for shit. And excuse my language, but you can't. Like they literally, nobody wants them. Nobody. And it has nothing to do whether they're going to get more opportunity in year 2 or not. Nobody wants those guys. So just be paying attention to that as we progress through the process. Is this wide receiver class overrated? Again, the answer for me is absolutely not. I think there are so many valuable, good assets that are going to end up in nice spots and be very good contributors for the NFL. But what I am telling you is you got to temper those expectations, because as much as you like Ladd or Xavier Worthy, the same high-end outcomes that we gave some of these guys, would you be shocked, Scott, if A.D. Mitchell went out there and had a 42 for 541 and 3 season? I wouldn't be shocked. If I told you that was Marvin Harrison, you'd be very shocked. If I said Marv ends up with 540 yards, you'd be like, whoa, disappointment. You got to set the level of expectation at reasonable levels as you go into this process, as you're accumulating picks, as you're trading picks away, as you're evaluating these rookies. Like, think deeper than just what a goddamn ranking says on KTC. Understand your league economy and understand what the big mouths are saying. The Ray Garvins, the Scott Connors, the Silvas, the Levitans, the Matt Kellys, Nick Ercolano. Be paying attention. Pay attention to what they're saying about these players, because I promise you it will maybe not influence the 300 of y'all who are tapped in weekly, but it will affect other league mates. Scott, anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, you nailed it. I think just pay attention to the language that some of the bigger voices are using when they mention Xavier Legette. Is it a negative connotation? Is it positive? Like, those things matter. Those stick in the minds of people that maybe in the background consume podcasts and content from 50 different people. But that stuff sticks in the back of my mind. Oh, man, I've heard just one too many people saying this guy is never going to be able to be a target earner or whatever it is. Just remember that stuff, because there's not a likability meter. There's a lot of places you can kind of figure out trends, but there isn't a likability meter. If there was, you and I would have probably already created it. We'd be talking about it right now. But as of now, we do not have that. But I think you can use those bigger voices that you said and use that in your analysis much more than their draft capital or their analytical profiles or any of that stuff, because there's not an edge in getting that information. The edge is being able to act on it once we know what your league mates are going to do. So great point to end it.
All right, y'all. We appreciate y'all being here. We will be back on Sunday night for another Destination Chill stream. Make sure you check out all the content on DDNA. If any of y'all got some ideas, there's got to be a way to crowdsource words and information. If y'all can put together a likability score, meter tracker, I'm not good with that technical stuff, let us know. I think there's some real validity to this. So that's a little challenge out there to some of y'all technologically sound folks. But appreciate y'all being here. Hit the thumbs up button on your way out. Check out Scott, Dynasty Trades in 5. We had a couple of super chats before we get out of here. One from your co-host, Shane, said, $15 from Shane. Thank you, Shane. We appreciate you. Is Ray on the roam? Is the wide receiver to train? He's the wide receiver 1C. He's been that for me the whole time. I have him, Marv, and Malik, and it's here together. And I'm going to just be honest with everybody, Scott. I don't think when it comes all down to it, I don't think Marvin Harrison Jr. is like an 1,800-yard receiver, and those guys are 1,100-yard guys. I think they're all kind of grouped together. Now, the ADV is 100% on Marvin Harrison Jr. for a variety of reasons, but I think all three of these guys are. We can walk at the end of the season and Rome led those guys in targets and yards, or it was Malik, or it was Marv. I think they're all three incredible guys, but if I'm picking them off the board in the startup, Malik Neighbors is comfortably the second guy that I would take. That's how I would play that. We got one more, and this is from Matt, and I guess this is a convo from last night, Scott. So 12-team, 1 QB, start 8 PPR. He's got the 102, the 103, the 109, no seconds, and a 305. Trade the 109 and the 201 and 203. Trade 109 for 201 and 203. So 203 and 201 for 109. Start 8.
Well, I think in start 8, 1 QB, you'd immediately go, give me the better pick. But I also think in this class, if you're actually just looking for something that you could fish on hitting, I don't mind. The 109 is already below the threshold you would even care about in 1 QB start 8. So I'm almost like, give me the 2 shots. I'll let someone else pick 109. I'll take 2 others. Now I have 2 shots. And the goal with all 3 picks is hopefully they hit so I can flip, because it's a start 8, 1 QB.
Yeah.
So I'd actually take the 2 there, even in a shallow league. If it's a higher pick, I'm not trading the 104 for the 108 and the 110. But when you're already far enough down, I'm fine taking the 2 for 1. Just give me 2 shots.
You're past the locked and loaded top 7 guys at that point. So it's kind of, I don't want to say tier break, but ADV perception break. So it is what it is. We appreciate y'all tapping in. Thank you for the super chats. Thank y'all for the support. Be back with more content later this week. See y'all Sunday night.